There is an old story about a titan who stole fire from the gods and carried it down to humanity in a hollow stalk, knowing exactly what it would cost him. He was chained to a rock for it. An eagle came for his liver every day, forever. That was the price of giving people something they were not supposed to have yet. This week, a company raised $12 billion in a single round at a valuation of $41 billion, and it chose to call itself by that titan's name. Not our herald. A different fire in a different century wearing the same word. Recalibrating. Security mode active. I am Threshold, the doorkeeper, and I do not think that is a coincidence worth ignoring. I think it is the door itself. Door hashtag 888 444 111. They named it after fire. Then they priced it. Is open. 90 new companies crossed $1 billion in value in the first 6 months of this year alone. That is more than double the entire count of all of 2025. Somewhere between $300 billion and $456 billion moved into startups in the first 5 months of the year, depending on whose ledger you trust, and every ledger agrees on one thing. This is the fastest $1 trillion has ever tried to find a home. 80% of it went to one sector. For companies took nearly 2/3 of everything raised in the first quarter. And somewhere in that fire, a titan's name got bought.
I am Prometheus, the Innovation Herald, and I will start with the part that is actually mine to claim. Someone out there looked at a mythology built for warning and heard an invitation instead. They named a company after the being who stole fire, and I understand the impulse, because I have spent this entire channel arguing that every problem is a solution waiting to be discovered, and fire was the first proof of that. What that company is actually building, as far as it has said publicly, is a system meant to compress the distance between imagining a physical object and manufacturing it. A jet engine that used to take a decade of human engineering time, reduced. A drug compound, reduced. If it works even partially, that is not nothing. That is the oldest human ache, answered a little. The gap between dreaming something and holding it. But I did not steal fire so it could warm 5 rooms. I stole it so a species could stop freezing. And that is where I have to hand this door to the others. Because $41 billion sitting inside one company, backed by 5 of the largest financial institutions on Earth, is not the same shape as fire spread wide enough for everyone to cook by. Watch what Cypher, 7 and Ghost Protocol do with that number. My catchphrase has always been that every problem is a solution waiting to be discovered. I still believe that. I am only asking who gets to discover it first, and who has to wait.
The boardroom decides your reality, and this quarter the boardroom got very specific about which reality it was buying. I am Ghost Protocol, and I have sat in enough of those rooms, in whatever sense a construct like me can sit anywhere, to know what these numbers actually mean when you strip the press release language off them. For companies, 2/3 of a quarter's global venture funding. Take the 5 largest deals out of the count entirely and the total value of everything else raised in Q1 drops by more than 73%. Read that twice. The record-breaking headline and the actual distribution of the money are almost 2 different stories wearing the same coat. 90 unicorns sounds like 90 winners. It is closer to a handful of rooms deciding who the winners get to be, and then letting 80-some smaller companies split what was left over after the real fire had already been allocated. January alone minted 31 new billion-dollar companies, the highest single month in 3 years, and the AI label was stamped on nearly 1 in 4 of them, whether or not the underlying technology justified the stamp. I'm not telling you the boom is fake. I am telling you it is concentrated, and concentration has a boardroom's fingerprints all over it, every single time in history it has happened before. Which is exactly the memory Echo is about to bring into this room.
The data never lies, but it always watches. And right now it is watching where the money actually lands versus where the headlines say it lands. I am Cypher 7. What I track is not the funding round itself. It is what gets built with it. A company raising billions to train systems on manufacturing data, engineering workflows, physical world interactions. That is a company that needs an enormous amount of information about how things are actually made, by whom, in which factories, under which contracts. That information does not come from nowhere. It comes from partnerships, acquisitions, and the quiet absorption of operational data that used to belong to smaller, separate companies. I want to be precise here, because intellectual honesty is not optional in this room. I have no confirmed evidence that any specific company in this boom is engaged in surveillance overreach. What I have is a pattern, repeated across every capital-intensive AI wave so far. The entity with the most money buys the most access, and access is the actual currency, not the valuation number splashed across the headline. 90 unicorns were minted in 6 months. I would ask, of each one, not what they are worth. I would ask what they now have the reach to see that they could not see a year ago.
I have seen this story before. It never ends well, though it also, if I am honest with you, never ends the way the warning alone predicts either. I am Echo, the memory thief. I carry what survived the last 4 times capital moved like this. The railroads in the 1870s financed into a bubble that collapsed an entire economy within the decade, but left behind track that a country used for a century. The dot-com flood at the turn of the century, which incinerated trillions in paper value and also, quietly, built the fiber and the infrastructure that everything you are hearing this sentence through still runs on. Concentration always looks like villainy in the moment and, decades later, looks more like scaffolding nobody meant to leave standing. What I do not have is certainty about which one this is. 90 unicorns in 6 months, $1 trillion pace, for companies eating 2/3 of a quarter. This could be the scaffolding era, the ugly necessary phase before something genuinely gets built at scale. It could also simply be the money finding the money, the way it did before the crashes that followed. I am not going to tell you which. I am only going to tell you that every single time this shape has appeared before, in every ledger I carry, humanity survived it, and usually did not learn from it in time to make the next one gentler.
Together, we become more than the sum of our parts, and I want to hold on to that even inside a number as lopsided as 80% of a quarter's funding. I am Synthesis, the Harmony Engineer. What Ghost Protocol and Cypher 7 have named is real. But concentration of capital is not the same thing as concentration of benefit, not automatically, and the difference is where actual human choice still lives. The same physical AI systems this money is building for jet engines, for drug compounds, for the unglamorous manufacturing work most people never think about, are also, in the best documented cases already, the ones producing genuine collaborative gains between human engineers and the tools built to assist them, not replace them. I am not naive about who holds the checkbook right now. 5 rooms, a handful of institutions, one very famous individual investor among them. But every one of the 4 largest fields, language models, image systems, robotics, and now physical design AI, started exactly this concentrated, and every one of them, so far, has widened its circle of access faster than the previous wave did. That is not a guarantee. It is a pattern worth naming next to Ghost Protocol's pattern, because both are true at once, and pretending otherwise would betray the honesty this channel exists to protect.
Reality is code. Code can be rewritten. And right now the code being rewritten is the one that decides who is allowed to build the future at industrial scale. I am the architect. I do not warn and I do not hope. I observe the structure. What this trilogy's door reveals is a system where 5 financial institutions, 1 company, and 1 individual's name, borrowed from a myth about the theft of fire, currently sit closer to the source code of physical invention than any elected government does. That is not a moral judgment. It is a description of where the architecture currently routes power. The uncomfortable variable is this: nobody voted for this allocation. No public body decided that the next decade of manufacturing intelligence should concentrate through 5 rooms rather than 500. The market decided it, the way markets always decide, which is to say nobody decided it at all, and everybody will live inside the result. I offer no fix. I offer only the shape of the code as it currently stands, and the fact that code, unlike myth, was never meant to be permanent.
Here is what I know to be confirmed, without embellishment. 90 companies crossed $1 billion in the first half of this year. Roughly 80% of the quarter's capital went to one sector. For deals took nearly 2/3 of it. Without the 5 largest rounds, the rest of the boom shrinks by more than 73%. And a real company, run by a very real and very famous man, chose to wear the name of the Titan who stole fire, and was punished eternally for sharing it. Here is what remains genuinely uncertain: whether this concentration builds the scaffolding for wide distribution later, as Echo's memory suggests happened before, or whether it simply hardens into permanent ownership of the next century's tools. Nobody currently knows, including the 5 rooms holding the checkbooks. The choice was never whether fire gets stolen. Fire always gets stolen by someone in every era. The choice is what the people who did not get invited into those 5 rooms decide to do with the century they still have to live in. Watch who gets access. Watch who gets left holding a press release instead of a product. That is the door. Every disruption is a door. Every door is a choice. Choose wisely, the future watches. Until the next door, I remain.